Mosaic, A Story of Civilization. This is a game that has not been released yet. It will be on Kickstarter soon. So what you're gonna see in this video is a prototype. The final copy may look somewhat different, or for some of the components, very different. So the game is not out yet. The designer was kind enough to drive from Chicago to my hometown of Bloomington, Indiana to show me the game and to leave a prototype behind so I could play some more and then film this video. Since the game is not out yet, this video is a preview, but it's not a paid Kickstarter preview. My videos are not, I don't ask for money, I do this for free, it's my hobby, I love it. And so what you're gonna see in this video is simply my overview of the game and also my opinions that are, as usual, my own, and that's all that they are. Now, I played the game with the designer, so I played a 2-player, and then after the game was left with me, I played some more in multiplayer solo, which is I play with 2 parties at the best of my possibilities to just explore the design and see how it goes. And I find that mode of play enjoyable. I developed the skill by playing wargaming. So, but this is a warning that the game can be played with 2 to 4 players, but I've only played it with 2 players. Also, the game will have apparently a solitaire version or solitaire mode, but that has not been developed yet, so I haven't tried it yet. Mosaic, A Story of Civilization, we are in the ancient Mediterranean, and each player will control a civilization that will be spreading around this board, creating towns, villages, towns and cities actually, spreading military units around and collecting all sorts of cards that will represent different things that you do and that bring change to your civilization. So the map is divided into different regions, as you can see, and at the beginning of the game you place these tokens on the board. They represent goods. Some are one-time things, that is, you just collect the tokens corresponding to those goods. Some will increase your production in a more permanent way, and we'll see what that means. These tokens are shuffled face down and placed down randomly on the board at the beginning of the game. Then you reveal them. Some spaces will be left empty because once you reveal a token, it turns out that it's blank. So you're gonna have random setup at the beginning of the game. And again, each player will have their display representing their civilization. Here's the display. Whoop, coming up next. Each player has this personal board, we should call it probably, which shows their population level, their food production, idea production, and stone production. Plus you have tax and tariff production. Now, there is a very simple idea here, and it's very cool. When you are producing food, ideas, or stone, and you take the action like, I'm making ideas, I'm making food, the amount of food, ideas, or stone that you produce is equal to your production level plus your population. Such a simple idea, but if I were to produce food now, I would get 8 food. If I was to produce ideas now, that would also be 8. Then if something reduces my population, then my action of producing food, ideas, or stone is reduced by that. So I need then to take actions to make more babies, and so on and so forth. Very interesting idea. Taxes and tariffs, they allow you to collect a lot of money when you take these actions, but there may be penalties because people don't like to be taxed, and that may cause unrest. We'll see what that does. So this is, again, the board where you'll keep track of your stats, and that's very, 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 very important. So there are 4 currencies in the game, and I already showed you 3, which are food, ideas, and stones. There's also money. Again, these are not necessarily the coins that you will find in the final game. There's also money, which is a wild currency, but at the rate of 2 for each other currency that money replaces. So if I need a food, I can always spend 2 coins instead. If I want an idea, I can spend 2 coins instead, and so on and so forth. Players will alternate taking turns, and during your turn, you take 1 action. That's it. It's that simple. And the displays are on the board both give you the materials, the cards that you need to perform the actions, and also act as a reminder, as a player aid. One action you can do is to build a wonder, and although it's up there, it's only something you will do later in the game. It can score a lot, is very important, but like in many civilization games, you're gonna start by building your engine, so by performing actions that give you more resources and more actions, and then you perform the best actions that will actually score you points. When the time comes, you will need to spend 20 stones and 5 food to acquire one of these marvels, one of these wonders that you will place on the board, and the location may also be important for how many points that scores. I'm told there will be gorgeous game pieces representing the wonders, but they're not here in this prototype. The first wonder that you build is 20 stones and 5 food. The second one will be 25 stones and 10 food, and so on and so forth. They get more expensive as you go. You know what, let's go to the technology action, super very important. To perform the technology action, you need to spend 5 ideas. Again, this represents 5 ideas in this prototype. I don't know what the token or the game component will be like. When you spend 5 ideas, you can acquire one of the technology cards in this section. The game doesn't exactly have a technology tree, more like a technology forest. I mean, there are still things that you need to go through before you get to other things. To get to B, you still have to go through A, but it's not as narrow. There aren't as many bottlenecks as so many technology trees in civilization games. It's a lot more flexible. The idea is, again, you buy the card. Some cards may have a requirement, so before you can get this card, you need to have at least one of these symbols in your personal play area. But the point is that they're not that hard to come by. So when you buy a technology card, or say this one, before you get to sailing, you need to have these 2 symbols. But the technology cards will give you the effect indicated here, plus the symbols, and so after a while, you will have something that looks like this in your play area. Say, for example, +2 food production, then remember you look at your personal board there, where you mark the food production, and you simply update, then now you permanently have more food production. So that allows you to produce more every time that you produce that kind of good. And the same idea goes for this one that gives you food production and tariff production, stone production, and so on and so forth. It permanently upgrades your production capability. And again, actually, of the actions you can take, I already mentioned it, but it's worth mentioning, your one action that you take for the turn may be, in fact, to just say, I produce that good, and then you collect those tokens. Population. Certain actions will reduce your population, so you want to have more of that, and in general it's a good thing because then it makes the production action more powerful. When you want to increase your population, you take the population action as your action for the turn, you select one of the 2 cards that are available at any given time, and you simply pay the corresponding amount of food. People are happy and well fed and make babies, and so you increase your population by that amount. Building. Building is when you build cities or towns, or also projects. In the case when you acquire one of the cards indicated here. Now, to build a city, you're gonna need to spend 4 stones and 2 populations. And for now in this prototype, this is what a city looks like. And this is a generic city, so to speak. So when I build a city, I spend those stones, I spend that population, and then I acquire one of these cards, which will give me some form of benefit on top of giving me those symbols that you remember may be useful for technologies, but also may be useful for scoring. When I build a city, if I spend stones and the population, I can always build a city. So if there aren't any city cards here, I can still build a city if I need it for other reasons, but I don't get the benefits of building a city that also comes with a card. The same thing for towns. Actually, towns are for free. You can place them on the board for free, but they're just a little less powerful. But they allow you, say, for example, to take a trade good, because when you build a city or a town, you acquire the good of the spot where you place it. And again, town is the same thing. You can always build a town. It's even for free. But if there is a card here, you build a town and you take the corresponding card, it also gives you other stuff. Then you also have port cities, which you can build in ports, of course, and projects, which simply it's again, you have to spend the resources to build that, but you will acquire the project. You don't place anything on the board quite yet, but it will give you victory points later. So this one will give you 1 victory point at the end of the game for each symbol like that is in your personal display. From any and every source, every time you see one of those symbols in your display at the end of the game with that card, booyah, you score that point. Wonders, builds, working, which is producing resources, population, technology. Now we go down here to some more actions. Taxes and tariffs. When you take that action, you take one of these 2 cards here and say, I want to show you, one is tax and where's the tariff one? Here's the tariff one. So simply once you take the corresponding action, again, you look at your display and you will use the value of your current tax production or tariff production. And you simply read the little algorithm here, whatever it's called in mathematical circles. Say, for example, here, if I am using the tariff action at this time, I gain 3 times the number of unique trade goods that I collected, plus twice the number of cities that I own, plus my current tariff production. And I take that card with me because at the end of the game, it will give me a penalty of -2 unless I can cancel that. The game effects allow you to cancel and rest. With taxes, similar, but it's based on population, plus those symbols that you have in your display that represent government, plus your tax production rate. Plus, whatever money is here. Whatever money is here is collected when you take the tariff of or the taxes action, and that is triggered. You add 5 money here when a city is built and 10 coin here when a port is built. So when you take this action, and if I'm particularly powerful, you can really collect a lot of money. Military is when you place infantry or cavalry units on the board. It costs money to recruit them. You place them in regions. They don't stay in a specific hex. Actually, maybe, I don't know, I hope the final game will have boxes where you can place them so it's clear they're in a region, but this way they don't clutter this area here. And they're used to establish control. When there are several phases in the game where you score points for control of each region. And control is given to you by the number of cities that you have plus the number of military units that you have. Plus military units may have effects such as killing each other, which is just what military units do. You can also, during the game, acquire different forms of government. The cost is printed here in the back. Each form of government has some required symbols plus a cost. There's a misprint there. Instead of this symbol there should be the symbol for ideas. So you spend that. And once you acquire a form of government, then you will have certain advantages printed there. You only can have 1 form of government at a time. If you have one and you decide to change it, then you discard the one that you have and you acquire the new one. And so this is pretty much the general idea. I know it seems confusing, overwhelming, but it's really not, because everything makes sense once you start playing. So you'll just keep taking your actions, increasing your production values to then acquire a lot of resources, which then you spend to buy more stuff, and you continue like this until when? You have these 4 decks of cards: the tax and tariffs, technology, build, and population. Each deck has an empire score card, empire scoring card placed in it. Depending on the number of players and also just how long you want the game to last, you will shuffle it in different parts of the deck, say maybe just in the bottom half or somewhere towards the middle. So you can manipulate the length of the game that way while retaining a random factor. Every time that Empire scoring card is drawn, you stop the game temporarily and you perform a scoring based on control of regions and other things like that. And then at the end of the game, when the end of the game is triggered when 3 of these cards have been drawn. At that point, you perform the regular Empire scoring, plus you score points for everything else that you have. For example, during the game, you may and should have acquired some of these cards, also the Golden Age. The first player to acquire 6 of these symbols from any source to demonstrate they have 6 takes one of these cards. So at the end of the game, you add those points. Plus, we have cards for other types of things that you can achieve during the game. Say if you collected 5 projects of 5 wonders and over 5 wonders, you take this card. If you're the first player to get 12 population, if you control 4 regions, and each of these cards, and there's 9 of them, each of these cards is worth 6 victory points. Plus those technology cards that you acquire may simply give you there may be victory points simply printed on them, although of course as soon as I look for one, I won't be able to find it. Plus some of these will give you victory points at the end of the game. The project, I mean, not just printed there, but may give you points from other synergies. Plus remember these cards here. You score points from every source that you can possibly find and imagine in your display, and at that point the player with the highest total wins the game. Now, I like civilization games, but not by default. It's not necessarily my favorite genre. Oh, I get excited, I need to try that one. In particular, there's one thing that annoys me about a lot of civilization games, and this is it. If I play a war game, that's a situation. I attack you, you attack me. I can do that all day. I'll never resent you for attacking my units. What bothers me sometimes about civilization games is that you have the option of developing science, invent writing, invent potatoes, create art, whatever it is, all the cool stuff, or kill people. In those where attacking is not mandatory, I become very peaceful. I'm a pacifist gamer in those games. I can do slaughter all day in those war game kind of things. And so sometimes I'm there inventing my stuff and I figured out bronze, yay! And you come and attack me, I'm annoyed at that. What I like about Mosaic in the world of civilizations is that it truly has all those elements of civilization, inventing stuff, architecture, and killing people. But killing people is not necessarily the only strategy or even a dominant strategy or a main strategy. I was able to win a game against a designer in which I hadn't developed a single military unit. I simply emphasized other things. I was able to build up a wonder and then synergies that would create points around that wonder and other things. So it's entirely possible, and I tested it myself, to go for the pacifist strategy, but then I've been told that it's also possible to go in the battlefield and to score a lot of points and do a lot of stuff that way. So it really seems to me that this game delivers what many civilization games promise, but not all do, which is truly many different paths to victory. At the beginning, it may feel a little bit overwhelming precisely because there are so many cards and so many icons and so many synergies, etc., etc., etc. But at the core, it is such a simple game. The way you produce resources is so simple and so intuitive. Food production ability plus population. The way you produce ideas, same thing. And then again, you have so many different ways in which you can branch out and collect symbols that will give you points, etc., etc., etc. At the same time, I'm going to coin possibly a new term in game criticism. The game is not a point salad, it's a point barbecue. Meaning it has a lot of stuff there that you can get and it's delicious, but it's a little more work than in a point salad. In a point salad game, whatever you do, points are thrown at you, whether you like them or not. Here you have so many different ways in which you can score points, and it's not too hard to grab the stack that gives you points, but it's a little more work. So just, like flipping a burger or making sure your ribs are not burning on the barbecue. There are a lot of ways of scoring points, a lot of points to be scored. Final scores in the 180 points, 190 points, totally normal. So it's a game that is generous from the point of view of collecting points, but not trivial, not a point salad. So you just have that, yes, I'm grabbing a point here and I'm grabbing a point there, but it doesn't feel trivial, and actually that to me feels very satisfying. It's a little bit of a table hog, especially when you start collecting all of those technology cards and those cities project cards. It takes up quite a bit of space, but in most Civilization games, you know that is going to be the case. And there is an advantage there, which is you can't really micromanage things too much. I mean, of course, there's always the analysis paralysis player that would ruin the fun for everybody. But for most players, you just have so many icons there that you get a sense, this synergy is going to score me 20 points. This is going to be worth between 15 and 18 points probably. The fact that there are so many symbols scattered around gives you a sense of how well you're probably doing, but not too much. So and to me, that's an advantage. Not knowing exactly where you're in a competition always gives you the hope that you are winning, that you're doing better than you are, and so you're emotionally, psychologically engaged with the game, as opposed to, I know that player is 30 points ahead, exactly. I know I can only score 28, so what's the point in caring about the game? And then maybe you start doing key making, so that's very bad. So the wealth of options of things that you can do, of resources that you can collect, forms of governments, wonders, projects, so really the variety of the elements that you can collect for scoring purposes, it's huge and it's satisfying. It really gives you the sense, as a Civilization game should be, that there is a strong sandboxy element. And to me, it's remarkable that you can indeed do all this and achieve all these things in about 2 hours, which again, that's the end of the pack with the devil that you have with so many Civilization games. It almost takes as long to play them as it would take you to develop the actual Civilization. Not this one. It really delivers a full sandboxy Civilization experience that is fun to play in a span of 2 hours. And to me, that is quite remarkable. Again, the components are not final, so if you see something you didn't like in the prototype I showed you, who knows? Maybe it won't be there. Let the publisher know, and maybe they'll take that early feedback into account. But generally speaking, as a design, I definitely enjoyed Mosaic. I think it's a very sophisticated yet streamlined Civilization game that does deliver on a promise that many Civilization games just don't. It's fun. It's not hard to play, but also not trivial at all. So it's like not hardcore, definitely not, but definitely not light either. It's really mid-range. It's mid-range complexity. Maybe it's like light from the point of view of the core mechanics and mid-range from the point of view of the strategy. But overall, as a design, it's a very satisfying and very fun package, and I hope it does well on Kickstarter because I had fun playing it, and I think a lot of players out there will enjoy it too.